Hello everyone. Today our topic is Pixar Animation Studio, namely, their success story, how a hospital software company became a leader in animation. So sit back and enjoy your time. On June 14th of this year, the animated film, Lightyear, was released. The story about the astronaut Buzz has already become the 26th project of the studio. Now this company is associated with high-quality 3D cartoons, but this was not always the case. To make a name for themselves and turn from a loss-making enterprise into a successful one, Pixar employees had to work hard. Pixar became known to a wide audience in 1995, after the release of the cartoon, Toy Story. It was a real breakthrough both technically and materially. On a budget of $30 million, it grossed $373.5 million worldwide, becoming the highest-grossing film of 1995. Pixar itself appeared almost 10 years before that. And speaking of its foundation, three people need to be mentioned: Ed Cadmill, John Lasseter and Steve Jobs. And in that exact order. It all started with Ed Cadmill, a computer genius and a fan of classic Disney. Since childhood, his dream was to create his own cartoon, but Cadmill had no talent for drawing. Therefore, he decided to take a different path and started developing hardware and software for computer 3D modeling. Immediately after college, in the early 80s, he was invited to work in the studio of George Lucas. There Cadmill headed the computer department. At Lucasfilm, he and his team built a powerful computer that made it easy to create 3D animation. It was called the Pixar Image Computer. While working at Lucasfilm, Cadmill did not forget about the dream of creating his own cartoon. He saw the opportunity to realize the idea when he met artist John Lasseter at one of the events, who at that time worked for Disney and also dreamed of working with computer animation. Cadmill invited Lasseter to create together, and he, without thinking twice, agreed. While working for Lucasfilm, Lasseter created the first ever 3D animated short, The Adventures of Andre and Wally the Bee. In 1983, Lucasfilm's computer department began to struggle. George Lucas cut funding due to his divorce from his wife and related expenses, and without money it was impossible to develop animation. Everything changed 3 years later, when Steve Jobs appeared on the horizon. In 1985, he was fired from Apple, and he was just looking for something to do with himself. Seeing a Pixar computer at one of the presentations, Jobs decided to buy it from Lucas along with the entire computer department. The deal cost $5 million, and Jobs invested another $5 million to enable work to begin. So in 1986, the computer department of Lucasfilm became an independent company, Pixar. At first, the task of the studio was not to create cartoons at all, but to produce devices and software for various equipment, including medical equipment. Things were not going well. Pixar suffered losses and Steve Jobs even tried to sell it several times. In order to somehow stay afloat, the studio began to produce commercials. To show the power of their programs, Pixar drew little cartoons. One of them, Luxo Jr., gave the world a well-known lamp, the symbol of the Pixar studio. But another cartoon, Tin Toy, has become much more significant. It was thanks to him that the appearance of Toy Story and other full-length Pixar films became possible. Merger with Disney. In general, Disney has never lost sight of Pixar. No wonder, because their former artist John Lasseter worked there, whom the producers dreamed of bringing back. According to the animator himself, offers from Disney came to him after each new short film. He always refused, offering to draw a cartoon for them, but at Pixar. Disney, in turn, did not agree. Everything changed with the release of Tin Toy. After the cartoon won an Oscar in 1989, Pixar began to look more attractive in the eyes of Disney, and they agreed to work together. At first it was about creating a half-hour continuation of the cartoon for television, but in the end Pixar took the risk of taking on a larger project. The companies signed a contract to produce 3 cartoons, and Pixar got to work. From that moment the problems started. Employees of the company realized that there were no special ideas for cartoons. At first, they wanted to make a character from the Tin Toy and a ventriloquist doll as the heroes of the future project. It was creepy and uninteresting. After another brainstorming session, Pixar's creative department replaced the Tin Toy with Buzz Lightyear and the ventriloquist with Cowboy Woody. By the way, they decided to make dolls the main characters because of the peculiarities of early 3D animation. Everything looked too fake, so plastic characters were a great option. The next problem was the number of employees and the equipment used. At the beginning of the work, Pixar believed that 8 animators could cope with the cartoon, but in the end it took 33 of them. The same was with other specialists. An even bigger gap, expectation, reality, was in the technical issue. It was planned that the studio will cope with 53 processors in 20 months. But in the end, it took 300 processors. For comparison, Pixar now has 23,000 of them. There were also problems with the script. The creative team decided that the film should turn out to be a buddy movie, but nothing came out the first time. The script was rejected by Disney because of the poorly written Woody character. In the first version, he turned out to be too sarcastic and arrogant. The script was completely rewritten, and Toy Story still saw the light of day. Huge success from the cartoon was not expected. The creators would be happy to collect $75 million. But in the end, the result exceeded expectations by 3 times. Also, Toy Story brought Pixar Oscar for special achievements, several more nominations again for Oscar, Golden Globe, Saturn, and MTV Movie Awards. Following the success of Toy Story, Disney and Pixar signed a new deal to produce 5 feature films over 10 years. A new problem facing the studio is the search for ideas. To solve it, John Lasseter and 3 Pixar writers Andrew Stanton, Joe Ranft and Pete Docter sat down for lunch and brainstormed. The lunch resulted in sketches of concepts and sketches of several characters for future cartoons: Finding Nemo, Flick's Adventures, Monsters Inc. and Wall-E. With each subsequent film, Pixar became more and more popular. The quality of the animation did not stand still either. For example, at some point during the work on Finding Nemo, the artists noticed that the water in the cartoon is so similar to the real thing that the viewer will not believe that this is graphics. I had to take a step back. One of the biggest changes in Pixar's history came in 2006 when Disney decided to buy the company from Steve Jobs. The deal cost $7.4 billion. The main condition was the preservation of the principles of Pixar. There are 4 of them. All ideas must be expressed freely. Departments in the company should be closely interconnected. No need to be afraid to take on big projects. No need to hurry. To date, Pixar has created 26 feature-length cartoons. At the same time, none of them was a failure. The budget of each was replenished at the expense of rental at least 3 times. That's all. If you liked it, push like button, subscribe and click on the bell. Have a good day.